Hey there, my name is Arjun and I'm one of the authors of Empirical. Empirical is an open source testing and evaluation framework for application developers who are building on top of large language models. LLMs introduce non-determinism in our applications, and testing or getting release confidence on them often involves going through hundreds of scenarios. We've seen that this introduces delays, and the feedback cycle for making a change and seeing how well it works across different scenarios can be really painful. Oftentimes, the evaluation is also a combination of objective evaluation and some level of subjectivity. We built Empirical to give you much faster feedback cycles and solve, objective and subjective evaluation together. So to do this, Empirical comes with, a web UI which looks something like this. So it looks a bit like a spreadsheet, and I'll walk you through the various elements. On the left here, I have the different samples or scenarios that I'm testing for this particular example. I'm taking a classical problem which basically converts natural language questions into SQL queries. So how many singers do we have becomes select count star from singer. I have two columns here. One shows me results from GPT 3.5 Turbo, and the other shows me results from Llama 3, the 8 billion version. Now, you'll see that in terms of the objective numbers, SQL syntax, which is one sort of common metric to look at when you're generating SQL queries, GPT-3 does pretty well and does much better than Llama 3, which is at 66%. But you'll see that latency for Llama 3 is almost half, right? And for a latency sensitive application, you might want to tune or tweak Llama 3 so that it can actually give you similar accuracy number. We can actually scroll through our inputs here and actually see what are the outputs that the model is giving, right? So we'll see that Llama 3 tends to spit out backticks, sometimes in the same line or sometimes in different lines. There are also certain examples where you'll see explanations along with the SQL query, and these are problems that could potentially be solved with certain prompting. Now, in a typical spreadsheet, I would have to go back to my Python or JavaScript code and regenerate a spreadsheet. But this spreadsheet is also a playground. So I can actually hit on the show config button here, which will show me the configuration that was used under the hood for this particular model. So this was the prompt that we gave, right? We said you're a SQLite expert who can convert natural language to SQL queries. And we said, answer the following question with only the SQL query. Perhaps we need to be a little more insistent about this particular request. So I'm just going to add this particular change to the prompt, and Empirical under the hood, if I hit this run button, Empirical under the hood will actually just rerun with the new prompt for all of these samples, right? And so I can actually get a quick side-by-side comparison for how are my input samples doing between different prompt versions, right? Within a few seconds I got an SQL syntax of 100%, and so that small prompt change is something that we can make and make to our application and move forward with using Llama 3. Now this example shows Text-to-SQL, but Empirical can be used to run for any application. Now to do that, all you need to do is configure Empirical for your particular use case. Let me show you how that works. So I'm going to open up my editor, VS Code, and I'm just going to show you the configuration that's powering this example right now. So every Empirical repo uses a configuration file. In this case, I'm using TypeScript for that, so that I can actually get editor suggestions, and it's called empirical rc.ts. Now this particular file is exporting a config object which has three aspects. It has runs, dataset, and scorers. Let's go through them one by one. So in the run section, I've actually defined the model that I want to run. Right here, I've given the 3.5 Turbo model and Llama 3, which was the example that we just saw in the UI. We can make the quick change that we actually validated through our experiments here. So let me actually just copy and paste that so that we get better results. The second section here is the dataset. Now the dataset is actually getting powered by a function called the dataset loader. Let's take a look at that. So this function is defined in the same file, and it's using a method called load dataset from Empirical, which is a built-in method which is basically picking up our dataset from a Google spreadsheet. Let's take a quick look at what that spreadsheet looks like. So this spreadsheet has, the sample questions that we were, looking at, and we've actually picked this from Spider, which is a popular data set for text-to-SQL problems. Now, this particular data sheet is partly incomplete because we don't actually have, the schema for the database, which is a core input that we need to run against the model. Now, to basically fix that, we can actually just write plain JavaScript because this is, a JavaScript file or a TypeScript file. And we made a small change here to, fetch the database schema, from a helper method and actually add that to the dataset. Now, this flexibility, essentially is what I'm trying to highlight. Because this is JavaScript, you can actually use JavaScript methods to, modify the dataset, maybe even generate, synthetic dataset that you want to run, for your tests. Let's go to the next section, which is scorers. So in scorers, we actually just had one scorer, which was a built-in scorer called SQL syntax. Now, Empirical comes with other built-in scorers, but what you actually want in this particular case is you want to maybe check for, execution accuracy, which is a popular metric for SQL, where you actually take the SQL query, you run it against a test database, and you actually see results coming out of that. Now, because this is JavaScript, I can actually write that method, and I've written a simple method here called exec accuracy, which is actually like connecting to a database. It's executing the query, and if it gets the response, it actually gives me a score 1. Otherwise, it gives me a score 0. Now, I can basically just use this function and add it to my scorers list here, which will actually enable the scorer, in addition to the syntax check that I had here. Now, this tiny change that I made basically updates my, test definition. And to rerun this, I can go into my terminal and essentially run Empirical with the npx command. Now, this will actually pick up the new configuration. It will make sure that rate limiting, batching, everything is handled under the hood, and it will give me new responses from the two models that I had configured, which is GPT 3.5 and Llama 3. Now, all of this is showing up in the terminal, so you can actually also run this in your CI environments. To open the UI, I can basically hit the UI command, open the browser, and see the results, so that I can get a combination of subjective evaluation as well. This wraps up, a demo of Empirical. We essentially saw the web UI, which is the reporter, this declarative configuration, which is JavaScript, so you can actually use, code for more flexibility, and the CLI, which lets you run these things in the terminal window. Hope you get to, give Empirical a shot. It is an open source project, so we'd love to, get your feedback either as issues on the repository, or you can also join our Discord community. Look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you.